FilmStruggles is an experience-based podcast where we ask all the questions an early filmmaker would make.
With a new guest every week, from experts to people that are starting just like us.
We cover different topics like motivation, work balance, networking, and so much more.
We discuss what to do, what not to do, and how to turn struggles into action.
I am Claudia.
And I am Gabriel. Welcome to FilmStruggles.
It's the spooky season and we're shaking our bones out of excitement for a new episode of FilmStruggles. All the way from Friday the 13th and the Scream franchise to Get Out and the Babadook, the universe of genre films is vast and it keeps expanding. But what is the audience response to those films? Are they easier to connect? Do they have to address social issues? Today, we're going to talk about genre films and all their possibilities.
On this episode, we're talking to Rochelle Chartrand, a creative producer of numerous shorts, former president of the Women in Film and TV Vancouver, and now an award-winning screenwriter and producer. Rochelle is the president of My Precious Pictures Inc., an independent film company in Vancouver which specializes in genre films with a social message. We asked her about her experience producing those types of films and her journey so far. Let's jump right into it.
Well, Rochelle, thank you so much for taking our call, and we are super excited. I love horror, and Gabriel loves sci-fi. So,
Yeah.
So we are super excited to have you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. My next the feature that I have in development right now is actually a horror sci-fi, paranormal sci-fi.
Nice. So, as Claudia said, I absolutely love sci-fi. I grew up watching the early 2000s sci-fi, like Bicentenary Man, AI, and absolutely love playing with AI and the mixing robots and human feelings and emotions and things like that. And that's kind of what made me go towards film, because I wanted to tell those stories, and I felt like they could be very inspiring because they're mixing two completely different universes. But I'm very curious how you got into making genre films, like this intersection between horror and sci-fi. What made you go there?
For sure. So I was a writer. First, I was an actress.
Okay.
Start off, and I wasn't very good. And then I discovered writing, and I realized that was definitely creatively where I could fully express myself. When I started writing, though, I was writing to write myself roles in film. And my sensibilities were more of the dramedy side.
Okay.
And then a few years ago, but simultaneously, I have a degree in physics. I used to be a science teacher. And so I would show sci-fi movies in my physics class, in my high school physics and science class, and have it as an assignment to pick it apart, right? Like what is not real in this. So that was a lot of fun. Definitely a fan, but as a creator, I was more dramedy. And then a few years ago, I was hired to write a horror paranormal sci-fi thriller. And well, it wasn't sci-fi at the time, it was paranormal thriller. And it was to be set in the Craigdarroch Castle in Victoria. And at the time I was like, well, I've never written a genre before, but they were going to pay me money. Unheard of.
Wow.
Great motivation.
Yeah, great. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. I can do that. And it was actually a life-changing experience, because I realized how much I was confining myself creatively by trying to stay in the real world. I always wanted to do movies of impact, social themes and stuff. Like I said, I was a teacher. I also worked with at-risk youth and young offenders. So just very, very socially conscious, definitely. And so wanted my storytelling to have an impact as well. But then when I started writing this feature, and it was a paranormal, it's set in this castle and a thriller. Again, I didn't want to go as far as gore. And there were some restrictions that were placed on me, which were actually became creative freedom. And then I was actually exploring my own philosophy around spirituality and what the other side is. And then that's when my physics my physics world collided with my
Uh-huh.
creative and my spiritual. So in this, I just like, yeah, I wrote this script, which was like a paranormal sci-fi thriller. Like, what a weird mix of things. And I got really great response from it, even though the producers then like getting right into the ups and downs of filmmaking, the producer couldn't fulfill his end of the financial agreement. So I was able to negotiate the script, which a
Mhm.
lot of it's one of my proudest moments as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, because a lot of people would have walked away and said, "Well, I got paid pretty good," but he never. But for myself, I was like, "No, I like this. You didn't fulfill the whole deal, so the script should be mine." And then
Uh-huh.
I brought it to a production company in Vancouver, a very large one, and they really loved it and said that they had never read a script paranormal that had this sci-fi twist. And so I really realized that I had something here, that this science fiction, but that was grounded in reality because of my background was science, even though I was not a huge sci-fi fan throughout my life like some people are fanatical about it. I realized that I had something unique to offer.
Uh-huh.
And then what happened is a couple of years, so this was, I was screenwriting, right? And then I got hired to write an adaptation for a book which happened to be a young adult horror, supernatural. And I was like, and I love doing adaptations. So it was like it pulled me, right? Like
Uh-huh.
this world of genre just pulled me into it. And again, it was just like so creative. And because I wasn't a huge fan or a huge like obsessive, I didn't know all the tropes. And
Mhm.
so some of the feedback was that everything was really fresh because, like it's human nature that you watch things and you repeat it or it informs your work, and mine was came from a different angle. And then I guess it's almost 3 years ago, my writing partner on a few projects, Titus Heckel, came to me with a script that he had written, which is a psychological crime thriller about a man chained to the wall, an African American 13-year-old boy who's bullied at school and abused at home, discovers a man chained to the wall. And I read the script as a script consultant, and I loved it. And in particular, it's genre for sure, but it also has this strong social message about toxic masculinity and breaking the cycle of abuse.
Uh-huh.
And so this is when I launched my production company, My Precious
Mhm.
Pictures, and the My Precious comes from Lord of the Rings.
I knew it. I knew it. The moment I saw like this is a Lord of the Rings reference, I knew it.
I love when
You
people get it
yes.
because it's a woman's production company, so it's like, oh my precious, is it like a feminine thing? It's like, no,
Yeah.
actually, it's not. It's so yeah, it's My Precious Pictures. And so that I built right away. Oh, I also used to be president of Women in Film, and
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
like watched tons of movies, um mentored and read tons of scripts. And we also have the Vancouver International Women in Film Festival, and watched what, from a bird's eye view, the industry and what brought audiences together. And there
Uh-huh.
really were two things: genre
Mhm.
and films about social messages, either
Mhm.
narratives or documentaries. So I was like, well, what if we bring those together? You take the most entertaining form and with the most loyal fans and mix that with powerful messages. So that's My Precious Pictures was born. And my first project was producing Chained, um, which I had produced short films years ago, mostly again so I could act in them. But it's a common thing as an actor in
Uh-huh.
Vancouver. But and people had asked me to come back to producing, but I wasn't ready. I was still developing myself as a creator, and I
Mhm.
really appreciate, or I'm grateful for that time as a writer, because like now it makes me, I have very great taste
Uh-huh.
in material. And also when I'm working with a writer, I have some street cred, like I know what I'm talking about.
Mm,
Mhm.
mhm.
And there's a mutual respect. connect, especially
Yeah.
in particular with Titus Heckel, who's the writer director
Uh-huh.
of Paint. Yeah, so we started producing that. So anyways, that's, I could go on, but that's how I got into genre in a roundabout way.
Wow.
Everything about my life is in a roundabout way.
It's nice and it's fun because it's like kind of sort of happened like kind of by accident or not, but like you
Yeah.
of course had to work yourself towards that. But it's amazing how you were not looking for it and we just happened and you liked it. You were good at it.
Well, I think that that's the message, right? Is that like there's a big complaint out there in the industry that people don't want to be pigeonholed. And I find that a lot of times it is the artist, the creator, who pigeonholes themselves. Like, oh, I do this and I don't do that, or I this,
Yeah.
I'm going to brand myself and label myself. And so we're usually guilty of doing it to ourselves, how we present ourselves in the world. So I would say again, like that moment, yeah, I was offered like good money, but I also believed that I could do it. And I had
Mhm.
no reason to believe that I could do it at all, but just do it, right?
Yeah.
But be open to that. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, like having a clear vision for your life and your career, but then being open to the little gifts that the universe gives you and
Mhm.
Mhm.
willing to embrace them.
Now that you say that, it made me think. So for example, for me, I also love horror, but I never, like yourself, I never go towards that bloody guts type of
Yeah.
horror. I mean, I respect people like that, and I know
Sure.
there's some people that do that, but that's not the sort of a style that I like. I like more like paranormal, ghosts, kind of like
Mhm.
based on a true story, and they always kind of have like a message inside that
Yep.
you translate it. Um, but it happens to me that sometimes when I say my ideas out loud, especially because I'm starting also, some people say like that's not scary enough, or why would it have a message if it's a horror thing? Like why
Mm.
it's not only killing people? And then I'm like, no, I think it can be whatever you want it to be. Sometimes I do feel that those like I close some doors at me by saying that I like horror, and I don't know if I need to be more specific, or maybe I'm just not approaching the right kind of people, and if they don't like it then that's okay. I should not do that to me, and just trying to go somewhere else because I think this is not good enough, and then I'll just move towards, I don't know,
Well,
something else.
there's two beautiful things there right now that you're balancing, and you're at the beginning of your career, so like explore, right? But
Mhm.
one of them is you're expressing yourself to somebody, and you can watch what you're saying, like like I like horror, but what kind of horror, right? Like I
Mhm.
just had a conversation with this about this with my development assistant. Like within horror there's so many subgenres, because I didn't want to label myself as horror, but it's like horror means scary, right? Like tension. And then, yeah, you could go gore or slasher,
Yeah.
and that's like an extreme. But um, when people say, like, well, why do you have to have a social message? Basically, they're just saying, like, why can't it just be entertainment, right?
Mhm.
And I would say, or this is what I do say, is that storytelling is the most powerful form of education that we have. It's the way we learn about life. It's the way we connect. It's how we build empathy. You
Mhm.
can read like stats on an illness, but when you hear somebody's story about it, that's when empathy is really
Yeah.
built, right? And how we retain things. And this is something that I learned as a teacher. Even though I was a physics teacher, I always tried to wrap things in story.
Mhm.
So I would say that first of all, if you're passionate about storytelling and you understand the power of storytelling, that you could tell somebody, like teach somebody that
Yeah.
and tell
Uh-huh.
somebody that. And then also there are examples like Get Out is a horror with a social message.
Yeah.
And this is actually the, I believe, the wave of the future, right?
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
actually been done with political thrillers for decades.
Yeah.
Like most political thrillers, like they do have a social message in there. And I just feel like if you're going to spend all this time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears, and it's all of that, why not do something of impact? Do something in the world and not just be like, oh, that was great. had some popcorn, watched something, and then never watch it. Like I've watched movies more than once and been like, I've already watched this. And I kind of liked it both times, but it did not resonate enough to actually sit with me.
Uh-huh.
Um,
After what you just said, have you ever experienced any sort of resistance from crew, cast, or even investors because you wanted to go into that genre, like this big, broad genre universe?
Um, no, actually, because and that it would really surprise me that anybody would in the industry would push back against wanting to be in genre because like there's whole sales agencies and
Hmm.
distribution companies and that like it's genre sells internationally way more than drama. Like a drama without stars is very very hard to sell. Even with stars it's very hard
Hmm.
to sell. Romantic comedies, same thing, you need uh, recognizable faces. And then comedy is so cultural that it's harder for comedies to travel
Yeah,
internationally.
what's funny here in Canada sometimes is not
Yeah,
funny in Mexico or in
yeah,
Brazil.
For
Yeah.
sure. And language itself, right? Because then you
Hmm.
have subtitles and it's like, well, that's not funny.
Yeah.
So many things are play on words, right? And then they also say genre because right away when you pitch a project to a sales agent, distributor, investor, whatever, they can see they can see the poster. It's like it's such a visual medium. Like I say, a
hmm
paranormal thriller set in a castle, you have a picture there.
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Where you try and sell a drama, and it's like you have to explain the character arcs and all of that. And you can have all of that in genre, and that's really great genre. Like some of you know the best movies, like Sixth Sense, and like these and Oscar-winning films that were genre because it's just heightened, right? It's so engaging and entertaining.
yeah.
And it's smart. That's the
Uh-huh.
key. Smart and character driven is the key. Yeah.
It's amazing to know that everything that you're saying, especially I thought before having this conversation even um that for example that the genre it's not like a well, I don't know, like I feel that all the prestigious, maybe this is only in my head because I also like I'm very new to the industry and everything, that only like the prestigious, I don't know, film festivals and awards they tend to go to like these drama um
Hmm.
films. So I was kind of, I don't know, like I still love it, but I was like, I'm gonna do it because I like doing genre and especially horror. But now that you're saying that, I don't know, I feel completely different just knowing that it's also a good starting point or a good way of selling your work, and it's actually very commercialized. I found the quote that you said, and you have it in your page, that it says a film can be both critically and commercially successful without compromising creatively, and I love that. And I yeah, this is amazing that what you're saying.
Yeah. And I love alliteration, right? Like all the C's. Yeah, no, it's funny because but you also have to look at your goals, right? Like what your career goals are, because there are genre festivals, but I would say there probably is some truth to if you're looking for heavy genre, unless again, like if it's really smart and unique and there's, it's still character driven, it probably will still can still do well in festivals. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the extreme examples like Joker, which of course still had Joaquin Phoenix in it, but there's, other ones that do really well with the awards, like well, I said Get Out and Black Klansman. Well, that wasn't the one. Oh, Black Panther is the one I was thinking of. Like where now even these Marvel movies or the superhero movies themselves, which are genre,
Mm-hmm.
action, fantasy, whatever, that they also are having these strong messages in them, and they're starting to be critically acclaimed as well.
Hmm.
Where
Yeah.
it used to be, and even though for myself, like again, I was talking to my assistant and we were talking about this, and it's like what we want to brand ourselves. And when you go out and you pitch a horror film or any genre, like you definitely want to highlight that it's smart and that it's
Mm.
character driven. Otherwise very quickly you can go to not even B level movies, but like C level movies, and they're like ultra low budget and that's not what I'm interested in doing. Like I'm
Mhm.
not interested in doing these ultra low budget films, which are okay as a career building thing, but I mean as that's what my slate is
Yeah.
Mhm.
that this is what I do. I pump out 20 movies a year and
Mhm.
play the lottery which one's gonna connect. But there's an industry out there. Like
Yeah.
those movies sell.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Actually,
definitely.
now that you say that, like I only have heard, and it said that horror can be done very well with a low budget. So I don't know, from your experience, is that true?
Yeah, I would say that that's true as well because it's so based on and because you don't need if you have a great hook for a film, which is horror is usually you need that, is that you don't even need famous like A-list talent,
Mhm.
Mm.
right? So that lowers your budget considerably if you don't have to pay the talent. Like, so Chained, again, it's just a psychological crime thriller, but it could have very easily gone horror just because of what the premise is, right? A boy
Mhm.
finds a chained man to the a man chained to the wall and then begins abusing him. It could have went really, really dark. It would have not changed the budget at all. At the end of the day,
Mm.
our budget is 1.2 million, but the production value is 5 or 6. We had really, really incredible talent working behind and in front of the camera. But I would say that if this would have just been like not a well crafted script, we wouldn't have had people passionate about it and want
Yeah.
to like even be a part of it, especially
Yeah.
in Vancouver, because it was really hard to get people away from the high steady paycheck. So you better have good material. And
Yeah.
but
A
yeah,
good story. Yeah.
yeah, and even the sci-fi, we have a couple sci-fi in development, but they're not robots and space sci-fi. They're more psychological or uh, technology
Mhm.
based.
Base.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so then the budget doesn't have to be as high.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's yeah, yeah. But any movie, unless it has like some sort of big high concept or visual effects, you can always do it for
Mhm.
medium budget, lower
Mhm.
budget. It's always
Yeah.
there.
You just said started talking about the community here in Vancouver that you kind of
Mhm.
have to have a very strong story to make people kind of leave the steady paycheck to go for those productions. How is this general community here in BC as a whole?
I love this community. It's by far the most supportive, and I mean it's bigger than even when I was president of Women in Film. It was during a time in BC when the tax credits were not what they are today and the dollar was on par, and so we didn't it wasn't as busy, and there was like a mass exodus, like people were moving to Toronto and that. So at
Oh.
that time those who stayed, there was really a really tight community, and now it's so busy now. Like at one point they were like practically pulling off people off the streets to crew members, and that I think it's kind of settled down now that they've trained people. But and so the community is quite large. But even within that large community, there's still a feeling of connectedness. And
Mhm.
so and within that, whether it's women in film or there's other little pockets of indie filmmakers, and then there's then there's the service producers who mostly work on Hollywood productions and are
Mhm.
producers for hire. But yeah, I love this community. It was super super supportive when I started producing Chained. I emailed some producers and people at Telefilm, and people just gave me their time. And then
Mhm.
I had some people that came on as investors in the film, and
Mhm.
yeah, I love this community. It's anytime that I thought I'm not doing this anymore, I'm leaving. It's like, oh, but people are so great. Yeah. Even
It's
though you don't
amazing.
get to see people a lot.
Yeah.
That's one of
Mhm.
the things. And like great things about like that's sad this year, like the Whistler Film Festival is probably going all online, and who knows what's happening with VIF
Mm.
and any of the little industry events that were always like great opportunities to connect because everybody's
Uh-huh.
so busy. It's a little sad, but we'll get it back.
And just a question here with community, because for me that's kind of like a new concept that I'm just getting used to it, because I come from another country where
Yeah,
I've never heard like, well, at least from where I come from, the community is like your group of friends and the group of people that you go
yeah,
and see physically. So I don't know here, when you say community, do you say like the whole film community, or is there a like a genre horror sci-fi community, or
right.
how does that looks like right now? During this pandemic I've been kind of getting a little bit used to the term, because I've been following a lot of the women in film and the BIPOC TV communities.
Yeah,
Those are kind of the two ones that I've been kind of seeing more content from.
yeah,
But sometimes I don't know, like just the concept, it
yeah.
confuses me a little.
So community is one of those. It's also kind of a buzzword, right? Because you can have an online community where you don't even know the other people in the community. So it's like one of those words, right? So there's I use the word community because Vancouver is, in my experience, is quite separate from Toronto. So I would not say the Canadian film community because they're quite separate. Where Vancouver is really of two camps. There's the service producers, the crew and that who work mostly in service productions, and then there's the indie film community. And so like there's the Vancouver industry, but I would say that there's more the indie film community,
Mm,
and then you know there's the service production that definitely works, it like works and supports the indie community. But and then within that bigger community, loosely used word, I would not say that there's pockets for genres.
okay.
I would not say that. I would
Mm,
say that there's definitely like the women in film community, but these lines are blurred, right? It's not like, oh, I belong to that
mm.
community. Usually belong to many of the smaller ones, like it's like a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Like
Everyone kind of coexists in the
In
same
together,
in
yeah.
different groups,
yeah.
right?
But I wouldn't say, in my experience, maybe not on the filmmaker's side, perhaps
Hmm.
on the audience side, that there's
Okay.
like
Mm,
pockets for different genres, but I don't know, we're not big enough for that
yeah.
still.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit for, I don't know how you do it, or I don't know how that works, but you talk about like you have a script and then you go and develop, and then I don't know how the order, or is there any, or did you just roll with it? Like, do you wait to, I don't know, like have a broadcaster or an investor or someone on board to start producing your film, or you just go produce and then?
It's a great question, right? And because there's no rules. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, you will find people that it's like, yeah, I'm producing. It's like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, I have a script and I'm getting it made. But what are you doing? Like if producing is a job, what is the job? Right.
Mhm.
And so it's actually a really great question. The thing is like how you basically once you have the script to where you're happy with it, it's still going to change. But where you think you're happy with it, then yeah, you need to finance the film. You need to find a way to make it. And so what budget are you happy to try for? And you try and piece together that financing. And so that financing can come together in a variety of ways. For Chained, we were able to get telefilm
Mm,
financing. So telefilm, of course, is does like different levels. Above 2.5 million would be the national, and then regional is less than 2.5 million. And then they also have the talent to watch, which I believe is like $150,000 is what they give.
mm,
And then in BC, we also have tax credits, but that's kind of like that's a that's basically a given. It's labor based, but you do need a broadcaster or a distributor on board in order
mm,
to trigger that. So even though a broadcaster or a distributor might not be bringing a lot of money to the table. You do need one in order to get the tax credits.
Uh-huh.
They have to promise that Canadian audiences are going to see it within 2 years. Otherwise, anybody could try to get these
Yeah.
tax credits in and make
Yeah.
a whole movie and getting tax credits. And then there's the other pieces of the budget. Traditionally, you can get an advance from a sales agent. I wanted to. I did go through a few sales agents, but ultimately, my goal was always to get investors on board.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because I want to create a business model that is repeatable and scalable and autonomous eventually, so I wouldn't even have to depend on government money in
Yeah.
any way. And so we were able to raise some money through investment, but we're also looking, like, like I'm creating this online platform with some other co-founders, and eventually it's not a crowdsourcing platform, but we do want to have it empower filmmakers to find new ways to finance their films, so that these barriers that we know that like exist for everybody, but in particular diverse filmmakers, that to get rid of them, to try and
Mm-hmm.
break them down, because there's so little money out there. Like, even when you look to telefilm and say, like, oh, they need to give more money to diverse filmmakers, 100%,
Yeah.
regardless, it's a small pot. Like, we're
Yeah.
fighting over a small amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of all of us fighting over that money, why don't we? There's a lot of money out there, and films can make, again, if you have a great marketable film, there's money to be made for investors. So it's a different mindset of being an entrepreneur and like running a business. And a restaurant owner would never open a restaurant thinking, in 20 years I still want to be getting government grants in order to run my business. You wouldn't
Yeah.
think that way. Yes, use what's there to get you started, but you
And
better
then
have a viable business model, otherwise you're not a professional for a
yeah,
hobby.
just gathering for the film, and then you will have to start all over again instead of
Yeah,
seeing it as a business model, like you said.
I was just going to say, and then once you have the financing together, then
Mm-hmm.
it definitely becomes somewhat easier, somewhat.
Yeah.
Less difficult.
Well, it's a major barrier, like getting your
Mhm.
financing together. I mean, you can't make a movie without money, not one that is that is going to be able to be shown in theaters and have theatrical and be a broadcast quality. So yeah.
And there, for example, you said, like, if you have a good idea that it's gonna sell, there is something that can be made. But I don't know if it's when you go through like trying to get an investor or having someone on board into your project. Uh, is it enough just by having a good idea, or do you also need, like, establish and have a background? I don't know, like,
Well,
what?
okay, so
Yeah.
every story has its own DNA in that. So this is my first feature producing.
Mm,
And so if I followed the rules, I probably should have done an ultra low budget one first.
mm,
But I never wanted to do that. And I'm like, why would I spend all that time and energy doing so? It's the same amount of work and energy
yeah.
at a high budget. So I'm just going to spend the time ahead of time getting the money together. And plus, I wanted to make the best product possible.
Mhm.
But what I would say is that, so I definitely didn't have a name or a track record. My writer and director did do one feature before, but it was ultra low budget. It did, like, it was accepted into some festivals and nominated for some awards, so that was great. But it was completely different genre. It was like a dramedy,
Okay.
and so that didn't really help us a lot. But what did is that we started winning awards, and like in development we were and there's so many great programs out there. One of them is called the Jets program, and their deadline is usually in December, and it's a program that Telefilm and different European organizations, and I think Australia, and there might be some other ones, support, and it's an international co-production and pitching competition that is held during the Berlin International Film Festival.
Okay.
And
Nice.
so 2 years ago, well, it would have been 2 years in February, we were accepted. And then we went and we pitched and had this whole package, marketing package, everything. And we won for Canada. So that was huge. Like, it was the
Yeah.
Berlin Film Festival. So now all of a sudden, like, I'm writing an email to an agent or somebody like that. Like, you better believe that's like in my first sentence. Like,
Yes.
it's about leveraging, right?
Yeah.
And we also got Harold Greenberg funding. So this is also how you know, beyond your own gut instinct and intuition, that you really do have a great project.
Yeah.
Because Harold Greenberg is also highly competitive. And we're like, I'm a first time producer, but we got this polish and packaging fund. So that was like, oh, well, we're on to something. And the script then was the semi-finalist in the Nickel Fellowship, which is put on by the Oscars. So that's like a really great, another stamp of approval. And then I was accepted into the producers lab at the Whistler Film Festival.
Okay.
And so that again, like, so you just like, but you know, like, which they're not separate, right? Like, one happened and then you build, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're gaining momentum for your project. And then, so when we applied to Telefilm just over a year ago, and it was our second time, the first time we applied, we didn't get it. It was before, about halfway through all of the momentum, but that time was really, really helpful for developing the script. But then by the time we went to Telefilm, and they're like, it was the no-brainer.
Yeah, you
They,
had
Mhm.
all that built into
yeah,
the project. Yeah.
but then it
Wow.
was still a roller coaster after that.
Yeah, no, I bet.
'Cause, yeah,
And
that's the nature of the
Yeah,
industry. So you can
yeah,
never run away from it.
yeah. And then we get it. We shoot it in December. It's in the can. We get like a great first cut of the film, shortlisted for Directors Fortnight at Cannes, and then a world pandemic hits.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
you can't get more of a roller coaster than that.
Yeah.
But we finished the film and could not be prouder of it. Like, it's so, we shot this, like I said, $1.2 million, but in 15 days. Like, it's just, when people watch this, they're not going to believe, with a child actor who we had to
Wow.
tutor and had only for 10 hours a day. It was insanity. And we shot in
Wow.
Colombia, but it was, again, part of the story. And wow, like, you really learn what you're made of and how passionate you are in the story, because about the story. Because I'll tell you, after that experience, when I look at a script, it's like, would I go through all of that for this script? Do I
Yeah.
believe in it? Also, do I believe it needs to, like, going back to like telling a story of social impact, like, do I believe that this story should be seen, or
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
you know, no,
Yeah.
like, and yeah. And so I ask myself those questions, even beyond the quality of the writing.
Hmm. Hmm. That's very impressive. Wow.
Yeah, that's very intense.
Very impressive and very inspiring. It's very inspiring.
It is. It's very
Wow.
exciting. And now, like, we have other projects, and now we're building off chains. Like, it was, you know, again, leveraging. I say, like, I think my greatest skill is writing email and and leveraging. I don't know, like, that's really all producing is to me.
Yeah.
Because of the name of the podcast is Film Struggles, we would like to throw this question to you. What is your biggest struggle now in your career?
The biggest struggle is trusting. Is absolutely, like, trusting. Am I doing the right thing? Are things going to turn out the right way? And yeah, you just have to know, like, there's so many times that I just, like, I should have given up, and it was really, really stressful because I don't know when to give up. And that can be both like a really great positive characteristic, to be tenacious, but if you become like obsessive and don't know when to let go,
Mhm.
it can be really, really, get yourself into a tough spot. And we were there last fall, but for some reason, just trusting the next step, like, trusting the next step is always, I think. And then, actually, to be honest, it's also trusting other people. Like, there's a lot of people in the industry that are just amazing, amazing people. And then there's people you don't really want to work with, and knowing that it's okay to walk away from a deal that's not in the best interest of your project or for yourself, because you're going to be connected with these people for the life of the film in one way or another. So yeah, trust is a big one for me.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
A lot of
thank you
fun.
so much for your time. Thank you for trusting in our project. And yeah.
Great. Good luck with everything.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to give us a review and share this with someone you think might need it.
Also, share with us your favorite quote.
You can find more information about the podcast and our guests on the website FilmStruggles.com.
Remember to follow us at FilmStruggles on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Thank you for listening.
See you next week with a new guest
and a brand new struggle.
FilmStruggles is hosted, produced, and edited by Claudia Hernandez Barragan and Gabriel Sousa Nunes.
Executive producer is Gerson Carranza and sound design by Sebastian Sagastumi.